Well, to be honest with you, you need to know that Steve and I planned to wear the same shirt. We felt it was good that we would be together. You know, all the staff would wear the same shirt. Kevin didn't get the memo. He wore the wrong shirt today. But Steve and I chose the buffalo check this morning. We've been talking the past couple weeks about what I consider to be my favorite parts of the Christmas story. Love the Christmas story simply because there is a very sense of mystery, of surprise, of unexpected events. If a human would have planned this out, it wouldn't have come about this way. Past 2 weeks we've looked at, the first part we looked at was the visitation of Mary and her response to the angel. We talked about the very fact that the very risk of the plan that God set out in investing, in planning with, and in allowing a teenage girl to be involved in that. And then we looked at the simple response of her one question: how? How are you going to make this happen? And her response to the simple answer is God's going to work things out. God will handle the details. You just do what you're told. And her response was so beautiful. May your word to me be fulfilled. Now, last week we looked at the announcement made to a bunch of sweaty boys out in the field that needed a shower probably. Ironically, they were keeping watch in probably the very fields that King David watched in. Fascinating to me that God would announce there, in the place where David started, and the one that would take his throne, that would fulfill the purpose of his throne, was announced. Powerful contrasts of the angels lighting up the darkness, filling the silence with loud praise. Talking about the fact that the King of the universe would be found in a feeding trough. The irony of that, the contrast, powerful part of the story. Today I want to look at one of the strangest parts of the story. And it's a big piece of the Christmas story, but it's the part that we maybe don't understand the most about. It's mysterious, it's confusing. It's the Magi. We can't even get their name right. Is it Magi? Is it king? Are they kings? Are they wise men? What were they? Are they magicians? What's going on with this? I want you to look with me and read with me in Matthew chapter 2. We're going to read verses 1 down through 12 to get the context of the story. Book of Matthew, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Hopefully you have it in front of you. So after Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where's the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." Verse 3, and when King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "Well, in Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Verse 7, When Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared, he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child, and as soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Well, as you can see as we read the story, there is a lot that is not clear in this story. There's a lot of strangeness. There's a lot of, how did that happen? And that's part of the joy of Christmas, isn't it? That there's still, even in hearing it hundreds of times, there's still this mystery. There's still this question. There's still these unknown machinations of God and how He did that and what really happened and who knew what when, that tell the story of God entering into our world. And there's a lot of questions about the Magi. In the original language, magoi, which means many or multiple Magi. As I've said many times, it's like, what is a Magi? And there's scholars can sit and argue this and continue to sit and argue this. There is no definite understanding of who these people are. There's lots of questions about them, like where did they come from? Were they from, are they Persian? Are they Arabian? Are they Parthian? Are they Zoroastrians? Where are they at? It's ironic, probably, I would say, gathering a bunch of the evidence and hearing all the debates, I would have to say it was probably Parthia, which is a combination of parts of Iran, modern-day Iran and Iraq. And there's still Zoroastrians, and I think, that was the leading philosophy and religion in Parthia. Still Zoroastrians that still study the sky, still exist. In fact, their ancestors live and worship in Mumbai, India. And they still have a temple there, and it's fascinating to visit it. But we don't know who they were. I mean, who were they? Were they three guys? I mean, were their names Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar? Probably not. The names given to them by people in the Middle Ages. We think there's always three of them. We always see it pictured as three guys traveling on camels. And maybe they did travel on camels, but it probably just wasn't three guys. We denote that, hey, it's three guys because they gave three gifts and each one came and brought a gift. Chances are to travel in that dangerous part of the world, it's just as dangerous today to travel cross country. If you were going from around Iraq and you were going to Jerusalem, crossing, the Saudi Arabian peninsula and coming across there, hey, it'd still be dangerous. There's no game. Maybe more dangerous then than now. You can at least fly now, right? I mean, travel then was a dangerous experience, but they were carrying gold. They were carrying precious gifts, frankincense and myrrh. And they make this trip. And we can know, and a lot of times they're given names of being kings. And that somehow, or they somehow were important people because of the gifts they brought. But chances are they were probably just Zoroastrian priests that had observed the star, made conclusions about it. It's interesting, though, also, there's a lot of questions about the star itself. We saw it rise, so we came. And somehow it took them to gather themselves and get ready to come after they saw the rising, after they determined what's going on and thought that, hey, there's something important here. Took maybe months for them to gather themselves, make that long distance journey. It's interesting that in that time that the star continued to exist. The language tells us that it wasn't a constellation, as some believe. It was a single star. It was a single light that they followed. What's also interesting about the star is that it had the ability to point out a specific home. In fact, when they got to Jerusalem, they hadn't seen it. They just came to Jerusalem, and then when they began to go on their journey to Bethlehem, they see the star again, which guides them to the very house where Jesus was at. I mean, it's hard to know, how could a star that far up point down to a house? Well, a lot of scholars believe, and I tend to agree with them, that, in Old Testament language and in biblical language, a lot of times stars and angels are associated. That they are beings of light, and that a star and an angel, and could it be that it was an angel that stood and gave light to point out the house? We don't know. That's part of the beauty of it. But we do know in the reliable accounting that there was a star, and the star pointed out the house, and the Magi followed the star. Another question, why would guys that are far off, that are not Jewish, chances are, would observe this star and come and say, oh, let's go visit a Jewish king? What we find out from Roman historians is it may not have just been a Jewish king they were seeking. In fact, it was well known, Suetonius and Tacitus tell us in their accounts, that it was well known across the East and well believed that there was an expectation that there would be a king that would be born that's not just king of a nation, but that it would come out of Judea and it would be sovereign of the world. Not just the Jews, but of the entire world. There's a lot of questions that go along with this, and there's little concrete evidence. I guess that's the beauty of this part of the passage, this part of the story, is that it induces faith in us. It induces us to, well, I don't have to know all of the answers. A little bit like Mary, maybe a lot like Mary. You have spoken, you have acted, you have proclaimed. And we can respond, well, you worked out the details. See, that's what I love about the Magi. First of all, there's a lot of things. I mean, they spark the imagination. And in a person that loves to travel, and a person that loves to explore and find new things and go on adventures, and to my wife's chagrin, the person that loves a good challenge. I mean, these guys strike at the very heart of everything I love about the Christmas story, is that, hey, these guys were not wimps. These guys were willing to go on a long and dangerous trip. They were willing to sacrifice so that they could experience what may have been believed as the sovereign of the world, the king of the world. See, I think travelers resonate with one another, and these guys resonate with me. But there's a number of mindsets that they have as they take on this endeavor. And I'm going to tell you honestly this morning, I don't have all the answers. I may be completely wrong about my assumptions and my understandings, but then again, hey, some of the best minds in Christendom and in history have not been able to crack the code of everything that this is about. But I know that there are some observable understandings that you and I can walk away with this morning. The first mindset, as I've mentioned, is sacrifice. The second one is a mindset of focus. These guys came prepared to seek. You don't take a long trip like that. Hey, you've got to prepare, and you've got to focus, and you've got to intentionalize, and you have to be willing that, hey, you don't know what's going to happen on the other end. That's what I love about travel. That's what I love. Hey, I have no idea what's going to happen. I may not return from this trip, and if I don't, that's okay. But the issue is that, you know what? I have no idea what's going to happen on the other side of the world. I have no idea what's going to happen. These guys had no idea how long it would take them, where it would take them. They were just willing and had a mindset to focus and to seek what they believed to be truth, which is the truth. There's another thing. They were willing to invest. They had a mindset that hey, listen, this endeavor didn't take a couple weeks. It's not, hey, I sort of consider myself an armchair traveler compared to these guys. Now, sometimes I'll be gone for weeks at a time, but that investment is nothing compared to what these guys, hey, we don't know how long it would take. There's estimates. It would take them weeks and months just to travel from wherever they were. Let's pretend it was Iran and Iraq. Maybe it was in Parthia there. It would take them months to get to Jerusalem. It was no small feat. And there probably wasn't just 3 guys. It was a whole entourage. I mean, you had to travel in packs for safety, especially if you're carrying gold and frankincense and myrrh. But they were willing to invest the time, the energy, the resource that they might experience the ruler of the world. There's another thing, and that is they came with the right attitude. The right attitude was, and you'll note that when they did come and they saw the star, they were overjoyed. Oh, man. And then they came to the house and they found Mary and Joseph, and they bowed down and worshiped him. Now you understand it's the idea of giving homage, but there's also a spiritual element to that. They paid homage. The whole understanding of the word worship is to consider and speak out loud that something is worth it, to give power to. It's also the idea of submitting from one to another. So they were on bended knee and they worshiped. They came with the right attitude. They came with the attitude that, hey, we're going to find some, hey, when we get there, it is going to be something worth seeing, worth experiencing, worth submitting to, worth worshiping. There's a final mindset among them. And it's really the watchword and song of travelers. They came with a mindset of flexibility. They were willing that, hey, listen, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where we're going to go. Interestingly enough, they were willing to ask directions. Now, this is a huge feat among men. And you know they were men. It's a huge feat that men would ask for directions. And you have to understand, there's something about traveling. When you're someplace you don't know where you're at, there is a humbling effect to it. There is an understanding that, listen, if I don't find out where I'm going, I won't get where I need to go. And it's humbling because oftentimes you're wandering around a city you don't know, and you're all by yourself, and hey, Google Maps will take you so far. After that, you better ask some questions. And if you don't ask questions, you might find yourself in a place you don't want to be. But it's the mindset that I'm willing to humble myself. Be flexible, not my plan. Hey, I got to find out where we're going. That's the mindset of these magi. Hey, we show up, we ask directions, we find out what's going on with Herod. But there's also flexibility in their end plan. If you recall, They've been told by Herod, hey, listen, you go and find him, then send word to me, and I'll come and seek him. And it doesn't tell us whether they perceived that there was a ruse or that they heard from people that hey, Herod's going to go kill this kid. Or was the mindset that God spoke to them and they responded. But whatever it was, they were willing to be flexible. They were really willing to respond to God and change their plans. See, how often are we willing to do that? When we are involved in our lives, are we willing to flex and shift and change from what we thought it should be to what it is and should be? See, the Magi are a microcosm of what's expected of people that know Jesus or want to come to know Jesus. See, it's just in a small, just in that story right there, you can find all you need to know about following Jesus. The first one is yes, there's going to be sacrifice. Hey, off the bat, you need to know you're going to have to invest. You're going to have, hey, there's going to be a sacrifice. You have to be willing to sacrifice and go on a journey. And if you're not willing to do that, you're probably not following Jesus. You have to be willing to focus and seek and respond to what's put in front of you. You have to be willing to invest your life to be part of the story. You want to be a Christian, you want to follow Jesus, you have to be willing to invest your time and your energy and your resource, your very self, your fears, your hesitations, your abilities, your inabilities. You have to be willing to come prepared to humble yourself, to worship, to have the right attitude, that you're not God, but there is a God and you're not Him. You have to be willing to worship and bow down and say, you are worth my investment. You are worth my time. You are worth my energy. Finally, there's that flexibility thing. You're going to follow God. You better be ready to be flexible. God does not tolerate rigidity well, especially when He wants to move and change things and transform things in our lives. You want to follow Jesus, you have to respond to His voice. Now, did these Zoroastrians, did they become Christians? Did they become followers of Jesus? We don't know. But we do know that the elements that we see them operate in signify to us that if you're going to follow this Jesus, if you're going to find Him and know Him and experience Him, that you have to respond in similar ways. See, that's the beauty of Christmas. It's this constant reminding us what it is to follow the King of the universe, to be part of His kingdom, to be part of His entourage, to be involved in His purpose, His plan for a lost world. See, that's the beautiful part of it. And what I love about it is it's the mystery, the surprise, the unexpected that we constantly run into. See, you will run into the Herods that try to use you to seek gain. You will run into difficulties on the path. But once again, the Magi, or the kings, or the wise men, whatever you want to call them, they hold as example to us of what it is to experience Jesus and to experience the King in His coming. See, that's Christmas. That's what I want, not just on a certain day of the calendar, but all throughout my life. I hope you'll join me in that. Enjoy the mystery. Enjoy that you don't know what the real answer is completely, except that God will get his thing done with those that are willing to respond. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the gift of your Christmas, of the gift of your coming into our midst, the gift that we don't know all the answers, that we are to respond to you, to seek you, to be flexible in you, to invest in you. Thank you that you did not lay it out so clearly that there would be no room for faith or for willingness to respond. Would you place in us the attitude and an understanding that you are the King and we are willing to worship? We invite you to place our focus on you. Cause us to seek you. And give us a willingness to sacrifice for your kingdom, to know you, for you are well worth it. Thank you for this Christmas time, for all that you've given us in Jesus. For it's in his name we pray. Amen.